Welcome back to Frosty Trails, Mysteries of the North. I'm your host, Frosty Jones. In our last episode, we introduced you to a man known simply as Dirty, whose life ended abruptly at the Comfort Inn in Fairbanks, Alaska. His death raised more questions than answers, and now we begin to unravel the darker aspects of his story. In this episode, we confront the legacy he left behind, a legacy of manipulation, destruction, and fear. This is Episode 2, Satan's Alley. Anchorage, Alaska, home to 286,000 people, and the largest city in the state. Really, it's just a hometown for so many Alaskans, a place where everyone is separated by only 3 degrees. If you've spent time here or know someone who has, chances are you're 3 people away from knowing everyone in town. You get known quickly in Alaska. Cold, long nights make people lonely, pushing them to seek entertainment during the dark winter months. Whether it's playing at Chilkoot Charlie's or throwing a festival in the woods, carving out a name for yourself isn't hard. Climbing the somewhat uneventful ladder of popularity in Alaska takes only persistence and sometimes an edge. Dirty was more than just a controversial figure in Alaska's underground music scene. He was a man who seemed to revel in his ability to control and manipulate those around him. To some, he was a problem solver. To others, he was a nightmare. As whispers of abuse, violence, and exploitation surface, we begin to see the cracks in the facade Dirty so carefully maintained. Dirty's behavior wasn't confined to his personal relationships. Dirty's influence extended beyond Anchorage and into one of Alaska's most infamous music festivals in Trapper Creek. There, the music festival scene thrived deep in the woods, and Dirty wielded an unsettling amount of influence. This wasn't a formal music circuit. It was an underground haven where artists, festival goers, and organizers gathered to celebrate freedom, creativity, and expression. But beneath the idyllic surface, a darker reality emerged. It was there that he curated a chilling part of the festival grounds, ominously named Satan's Alley. It was said to be his domain, a space where the rules didn't apply and where whispers of horrifying events became the stuff of legend. At the end of that shadowy, winding alley stood his camp, a dimly lit teepee and an old creeper van, both shrouded in an unsettling aura. This was Dirty's domain, a place where rules dissolved and chaos reigned.
Satan's Alley wasn't on any map, but everyone knew where it was. Dirty ran it and it was dark. He'd get people whatever they wanted, drugs mostly. But it wasn't just that. There were stories of people getting drugged without their knowledge and women waking up confused, unsure of what had happened to them. It was like something out of a nightmare.
Satan's Alley was infamous amongst festival goers. The energy was suffocating, almost malevolent. It became a haven for excess and indulgence, but also a trap for the unsuspecting. Stories emerged of women who went there and never felt safe again. Some never returned to the festival at all. Despite numerous allegations of abuse, Dirty always seemed to evade accountability. Why? Charisma and connections allowed him to maneuver through the cracks, deflecting scrutiny with practiced ease. Witnesses were often too afraid to come forward, their silence bought with threats and through fear of exposure. Others who tried to speak out found their voices drowned in a web of denial and doubt, as Dirty skillfully manipulated narratives to paint himself as the victim. He thrived in the shadows, exploiting the fragmented nature of the festival culture and isolation of Alaska's tight-knit communities to keep his secrets buried. How did he manage to maintain such a grip on his world? The answers lay in the intricate network of fear and loyalty he had cultivated, a web designed to shield him from the consequences of his actions. Let's take a step back to explore the broader scope of his activities. Dirty wasn't just a participant in the Trapper Creek Festival. He was deeply embedded in the culture, shaping it in his own sinister image. He was best friends with the festival and landowner Boot. He was given domain and a space for him to do whatever he pleased. Amongst the facade of a safe gathering of friends and community, there was a monster. His influence touched every corner of the event, from the artists invited to the vibe that permeated the gatherings. Many attendees saw the festival as a place of freedom and expression, but Dirty used it as his personal hunting ground. He fostered an environment where indulgence and boundary pushing were not only encouraged, but manipulated for his own gain. Satan's Alley became a reflection of his twisted control, a space where the line between thrill and terror blurred, making it clear that Dirty's hand was in everything. For some, the festival became tainted, an annual reminder of the darker truths hiding behind the music and lights. He positioned himself as an enforcer, a gatekeeper, and to some, a necessary evil. But there's another layer to this story. Dirty didn't operate alone. He surrounded himself with a group of accomplices, a collection of young, beautiful women known to some as the Gypsy Witches. These witches dressed in elaborate bohemian outfits, adorned with feathers, beads, and shimmering fabrics. They exuded a sense of otherworldly freedom that festival-goers found intoxicating. These witches were as enchanting as they were dangerous, using their charm to lure unsuspecting festival-goers into Dirty's web. At the Trapper Creek Festival, the Gypsy Witches were notorious. Their beauty and allure were their weapons, and they wielded them with precision. They moved through the festival grounds like a force, captivating with their striking sexuality, magnetic charm, and an air of mystery that was impossible to ignore. These women would approach young men, promising them an out-of-body experience. The Gypsy Witches didn't just approach their targets, though. They studied them. They had an uncanny ability to sense vulnerability. Lonely travelers, eager young men, or anyone caught in the throes of a psychedelic haze. They'd draw them in with whispered invitations to a secluded spot, the promise of an unforgettable experience dangling like bait. Once isolated, the witches worked as a team, blurring the lines between fantasy and manipulation. They'd offer a hit of a mysterious substance, often claiming it was a path to enlightenment or a deeper connection with the universe. From there, the situation spiraled. The men, often disoriented from the drugs or overwhelmed by the sensory overload, would find themselves stripped of their usual boundaries, literally and metaphorically. The witches dressed them in bizarre spandex costumes, further disarming them by turning their appearance into a spectacle. Promises of liberation, freedom, and scoring them anything they wanted as they were led deeper into the shadows of Satan's Alley. It wasn't just the physical isolation or the drugs that trapped these men. It was the psychological game. The Gypsy Witches wielded their allure and influence, creating an environment where questioning their intentions felt impossible. By the time their victims realized something was wrong, it was too late. Once the men were lured to Satan's Alley, they would find themselves face to face with Dirty. At first, he played the part of a friendly host, exuding a false sense of warmth and camaraderie. He'd offer them more drinks and another hit, as though they were being welcomed in an exclusive circle. But the atmosphere quickly turned dark. Dirty had a way of twisting the situation, pushing boundaries under the guise of fun or rebellion. By the time the men realized they were being manipulated, it was already too late. When they woke up the next day, memories were fragmented, if not entirely gone. Bits and pieces of the night would come back in flashes, things they'd done, things they'd said, and a wave of shame and confusion would crash over them. Many couldn't reconcile the person they became under Dirty's influence with who they were before. The psychological toll was devastating, leaving them haunted by the choices they couldn't even fully remember making.
They'd pull you in, make it feel like some kind of dream. Then it all went blurry. I woke up at Satan's Alley, confused, and Dirty was right there, too close. He was looking at me like he knew something I didn't, like he'd been involved. I couldn't remember what happened, but the way he acted, it made my skin crawl. I felt sick, like something had happened I couldn't undo, and I never really know the truth.
Dirty's power didn't solely come from the charisma he exuded or the group of enablers surrounding him. It came from something far more sinister, blackmail. Dirty wasn't just a collector of secrets, he weaponized them. His domain, Satan's Alley, wasn't just a playground for excess, it was also his hunting ground. The things he saw, the vulnerable moments he created, and the evidence he gathered became his arsenal. Attendees who found themselves lost in the haze of drugs or caught in compromising situations often woke up to a far grimmer reality. Dirty would hint that he knew more than they wanted anyone else to know. Those whispers carried an implicit threat, leaving his victims bound by fear and shame. For Dirty, it wasn't just about controlling the individuals. It was about weaving a web of silence so deep that no one dared challenging him. In time, this twisted strategy expanded into something even more calculated. Dirty launched a private investigations firm he called To the Top Investigations. While it might have seemed legitimate to outsiders, insiders knew better. This was no ordinary business. He leveraged his connections, his secrets, and his knack for digging into people's lives to solidify his dominance. Like a shadowy Alaskan Jeffrey Epstein, Dirty used his wealth of information to control, intimidate, and silence anyone who threatened to expose him. Through fear and manipulation, Dirty amassed a power that extended far beyond the festival grounds. He became a figure whose reach seemed endless. his name whispered not just in Alaska, but in places like Austin, Portland, and Burning Man. Dirty's tactics didn't end when the festivals were over. Back in Anchorage, his parties were another setting for chaos and manipulation. These gatherings, hosted at what he claimed was his home, were infamous for their decadence and debauchery. Yet, much like Satan's Alley, they were shrouded in whispers of darker events. After his death, the truth came out. Dirty didn't even own the house. He had been renting it the entire time, using it as a stage to project an illusion of power and permanence. But Dirty's toxic legacy came at a cost. He had done wrong to so many, lovers, friends, and strangers alike, that he left behind a trail of enemies. Some despised him quietly, while others harbored a burning hatred, openly wishing for his downfall. Whispers of revenge echoed through the shadows of his life. By the time of his death, Dirty wasn't just a man with secrets. He was a man marked by the grudges of those he had done wrong, some of whom may have wanted him dead. As we peel back the layers of his toxic empire, questions still linger. How did Dirty manage to stay untouchable for so long? And how many lives did he destroy before meeting his own end? In the next episode of Done Dirty in Alaska, we'll dive deeper into the role of those who surrounded him. The enablers who fueled his power, the victims he left shattered, and those who finally said enough was enough. Together, we'll uncover the secrets he couldn't bury and continue to follow the frosty trails towards the truth. Subscribe now to Frosty Trails, Mysteries of the North. And remember, the cold doesn't just preserve secrets, it reveals them. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and follow those frosty trails.